Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr here today, and I am joining in with the Pretty Pink Posh August release blog hop, and I am using tons of brand new product for this super sweet Thanksgiving scene card. Really excited about the products from this release, and I'm doing a little no-line coloring with the images as well as using a couple of new dies and a previously released die from my stash. We're going to start with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel of smooth white cardstock and apply 3 shades of Distress ink to this background, working to blend the colors seamlessly to create that really fall kind of nighttime feeling scene. I want to have a little pumpkin patch with kind of the patch itself, a border of pumpkins, the fence border, and then we're going to have our scarecrow tucked into our pumpkin patch, and one of the other images from the new Fall Signs stamp set, an individual pumpkin with a sign kind of in front of that, and we'll finish with a Happy Thanksgiving script. So I'm using my 3 shades of Distress ink. I started with Wild Honey first, and then I'm going to blend the chipped Sapphire into the Wild Honey. The Wild Honey really isn't going to show a ton. It's just going to make that kind of area close to the landscape a little bit lighter, almost like the sun is setting. And then we're going to have chipped Sapphire as the majority of our background and finish with black soot up high. When using regular Distress inks as opposed to Distress oxides, you're probably going to want to kind of work a little bit more to blend them. Oxides would more than likely blend a little bit easier on smooth white cardstock. If you don't want to have to work quite as hard, you could always create your background from Bristol smooth cardstock as well. But you can see going over those areas, going over where they meet several times, you generally will get a really beautiful seamless ombre blend. Now once I have my background all created, I wanted to give it a shimmery kind of distressed background, almost like stars in the sky. I'm going to take some Lawn Fawn liquid stardust and splatter this over my background using a paintbrush. Anywhere that the liquid stardust hits and reacts with the Distress inks, it's going to wick away the ink, leaving some lighter areas, and because this is liquid stardust, it's shimmery, so super pretty for this card. This card kind of straddles the Halloween season going into Thanksgiving. At least that's kind of how I was feeling it. So if you wanted to use different images, you could totally make this background into a Halloween card instead. In fact, I'm using what's called the spooky fence for my card, but it's not really spooky for this particular card. This is a Thanksgiving card, so I'm using it in my pumpkin patch as just this kind of imperfect fence. So definitely don't let the name distract you or make you think it only can be for Halloween, because I really think it works great for other fall themed projects as well. I die cut this from some Lawn Fawn Wood Grain Neutrals cardstock, and then I took another piece of smooth white cardstock and used a Pretty Pink Posh Stitched Borders 1 die. So we're throwing it way back there to some dies I had in my craft stash. This is kind of a curved edge to it, and I'm using it for my little pumpkin patch. And I'm going to ink this panel then with peeled paint and Forest Moss Distress inks. These are my go-to green colors when I want to do a landscape for fall, because they're nice and muted. So instead of going like the mowed lawn route that I would normally do for spring or summer, I really like Forest Moss and peeled paint for autumn themed cards. For the fence, because we're using Distress ink for almost everything here, I really wanted to use something for the fence as well to give it a little distressing. And so we're just going to kind of quickly go over the edges of the fence with ground espresso Distress ink to darken up those little areas. And that looks great there. I'm going to make sure and clean my work surface often so I don't cross-contaminate with different colors of ink. And then this is kind of what it's going to look like. So we're going to have our background, we're going to have our fence, then we're going to have our little landscape down near the bottom. So looking super cute there, loving how this is turning out. Let's go ahead and take our background. The liquid stardust has dried, and we're going to take another new product from the Pretty Pink Posh August 2019 release. This is the Stars Stencil. And I am going to pounce this over the background. I'm not going to go over the whole thing. I'm just going to do areas of the stencil so that it's imperfect. And I'm using the Hero Hues Sea Salt Reactive ink. And I'm using a fairly heavy hand. And I'm going to pounce that through just the upper portion of the card, and that's going to finish off my sky. Look how fun that is. As the ink dries, it will fade just a tiny bit, but it's still going to be very noticeable in the upper part of our card. Now we are ready to go ahead and stamp our images from the Fall Borders stamp set and the Fall Signs stamp set. Now there is not a coordinating die for the Fall Borders, and I want to put that out there. I don't know what I was thinking when I first started my card. I really thought there was, and so I stamped all these images. I was watching a show while I was coloring, and I got to the die cutting part, and I was like, uh-oh. Because if you guys have followed my videos at all, you know that I'm not a huge fan of fussy cutting, mostly because I'm just not that great at it. But I really, really envisioned the fall borders on my card, and I have to say it actually worked out fine, and it took no time at all to fussy cut with a nice little white border. I really wanted it to look like my scarecrow and my pumpkin fall sign images. So I left a white border around it. I did not cut right up next to the stamped line or anything like that. And it actually worked out fine. So don't be deterred if there are not coordinating dies. In fact, I know some of you actually prefer not to use the dies. You enjoy the fussy cutting. I'm just putting it out there. It's not my favorite thing, but when it works out, it makes me so, so happy. I am coloring in my images now with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. These images were stamped with the Ink on 3 Fade Out No Line Coloring ink on Bristol Smooth cardstock, and then I am using my Zigs to color them in. You guys probably know, if you follow me already, I absolutely love this technique. Probably one of my favorites. I'm really, really love using the Zigs with the no line coloring, and you get fantastic results on the Bristol Smooth cardstock. So for the face of my scarecrow, I used beige and medium beige. For his pants, I used deep blue and blue haze. And then I'm using mustard and a blender for the straw, for hair, for the straw coming out of the sleeves and down at the bottom. If at any time you're wondering exactly which colors I used when coloring in my images, you can find that listed along the bottom edge of the screen. Hopefully that makes for easy reference. Also, if you visit the link here underneath the video on YouTube and visit my blog, I do have them listed out by section. So it'll say scarecrow colors, and it has those listed out. Orange pumpkins, green pumpkins, beige pumpkins. So if you want to know the exact colors, you can find that information there as well for easy reference if it goes too fast on the screen. For the sign, I used mid-brown and oatmeal. And then we're going to use a little deep red and pale rose for the red shirt. I know the pale rose probably kind of throws you off, but it's a great blending lighter color for the deep red. It just gives you that nice shading, even though it's a nice soft kind of muted pink. Definitely sticking with my muted colors, just like I talked about at the beginning with the choices for distress inks, where I purposely chose the more muted fall tones. I want to choose those colors for coloring in my images so it all ties together nicely. That definitely influences my color choices as far as the blue color choices. Spring and summer projects are going to be much, much brighter. These are going to be more muted. The hat is deep blue and haze blue again. The nose for my scarecrow is brown and light brown. The cheeks are pink haze, and then a little Persian green for the band around the hat. My pumpkins are all going to be colored, not all, pardon me. The orange pumpkins are all going to be colored with brown and light brown. And I know you might be thinking that does not look brown. The brown colors from the zigs, there are lots and lots of shades, and there are colors that are definitely more in the brown color family. Brown and light brown are my go-tos for coloring things like foxes. Pumpkins, it's very orangey in tone, and I think it's the perfect pumpkin color combination, so that's what I'm using here. My signs will all be colored with mid-brown and oatmeal. So just like the sign on the scarecrow, this one's going to be the same. Stems for all the pumpkins, also with mid-brown and oatmeal. And then my little leaf here is going to be olive green and the ochre color. Now I'm going to color the pumpkins in the border. So any of the orange pumpkins are going to be that same color combination that I just used. That's going to be brown and light brown for the orange pumpkin. I'm cleaning the tip of my marker off often, so I'm not transferring a bunch of the darker brown color to those lighter areas, and that gives me the nice effect. Stems, mid-brown and oatmeal, and then any of the little curly-Q greenery here is going to be my olive green marker. My beige pumpkins are going to be a combination of beige and medium beige. If you don't have a medium or a light beige marker, you could always use a blender. Blenders often are fantastic because they just provide a way to get you kind of a lighter version of a color, blend out things beautifully. The blender gets a lot of love from me. It's a fantastic marker to have in your stash. My green pumpkins are going to be olive green and ochre, and that is just going to continue throughout. So leaves and those pumpkins are those two colors. And I'm going to continue to color this entire border in. I purposely did not color them, in order. I tried to do a nice variety of the pumpkins and have all three colors represented nicely because I'm a big fan of colorful pumpkins. So I'm going to go ahead and finish coloring all of these in. And then as I mentioned, there are not coordinating dies for the fall borders, so that will have to be fussy cut. And I simply just grabbed my scissors and trimmed that out. As it turned out, you would really only need to trim the top border of this if you're going to do a card like I did and tuck it underneath something else. I hadn't really thought that far ahead when I did it, and I just kind of sat and trimmed it out, but I could have left that bottom border completely straight and tucked it underneath. That stitched border's one curved die, and no one would know. I love seeing this border come to life with all these beautiful pumpkins. Don't you? Just love this. I love pumpkins. I love decorating with pumpkins, and I know I said this at the beginning of the video, and I've also mentioned it in my blog post, but I'm a big fan of fall, and so I absolutely love all the images and things that come with it. Definitely did more orange pumpkins than any other color. The orange provides a nice pop of color. We've already got green in the background, and then beige is of course a neutral. And so the orange really provides that pop of color, as does the red shirt on the scarecrow. His hat and his pants, those are blue, but so is the sky. So I tried to find as many ways as possible to incorporate reds and oranges into the design so that it really would pop. That's going to be the same thing for when we die cut Happy Thanksgiving. I wanted that to stand out, so I don't want to go with blues, I don't want to go with greens or browns. I definitely want to use some yellows and oranges so that the sentiment is very, very legible. The other great thing, these fall signs images Obviously, there's sentiments in the fall signs stamp set. You can customize the signs with whatever sentiments you want. If you want to make that a little easier, I would go ahead and stamp those now, and then stamp, emboss, then die cut. I ended up die cutting my images first, the scarecrow and that individual pumpkin, and then I put them in my MISTI, stamped the sentiments, and heat embossed with white embossing powder, and I'll show you that here in a second. I am gluing down my border, and then I'm gluing down my spooky fence, and I'm not worrying about tucking it too far underneath because my pumpkins are actually going to cover a lot of that up. So I started to lay it down, and before that glue set, I popped it up real quick because I was like, oh, I think that's going to be too far down, and you're not going to get the great visual of that fence in the background. So there is that. I've got my borders all in place. I'm going to then take the many thanks, many blessings sentiments and stamp those on my images. I really liked the repetition of the word many, so I picked those two greetings for this. So one says many thanks, one will say many blessings, and then we'll have the Happy Thanksgiving die cut. I stamped on the sign with clear embossing ink, and I will heat emboss with white embossing powder. I know I maybe sound like a broken record, but one of the reasons I choose to do the white embossing on these signs, not only is the sign colored with brown ink, so white embossing is going to show up really nice on it, but I did not stamp black outlines for my images to color them in. This is no line coloring. Then when I die cut them, they have that white border all the way around. Well, because of that, I really like the addition of the white sentiments on the signs. It ties in nice with the white outline of our fussy cut and die cut images. Once I have my two images stamped and embossed, we can add those to our scene as well. Now, I opted to actually not add anything extra to the top portion of my scene. I kind of kicked around adding maybe some additional little die cut stars or stamped stars or something else, and ultimately I decided this is a pretty bottom half of the card intense design, and I felt like that it would balance it out to have a little bit of space for your eye to rest. There is a lot still going on. I mean, we've layered ink, we've layered liquid stardust, we've layered some stenciling. So it isn't like there's nothing there, but I thought it just gives your eye a little bit of a place to rest by not adding additional things. If you are going to maybe do something else, so let's say we switch up the sentiments and make this a Halloween card. You could add some little bats up there. I think that would be super cute. Some maybe spooky yellow stars, I don't know, ghosts, whatever. There's lots and lots of things you can do here. So I'm playing around with my images, trying to find the best. I don't want to cover up too many of the pumpkins with this individual one. So I ultimately chose to cover up a pumpkin that was colored orange. I'm going to adhere the Mini Blessings Fall Signs pumpkin with foam adhesive. And then I've got my scarecrow kind of at an angle tucked between the spooky fence and our pumpkin border. And then I've got a piece of fun foam that I am adhering stick-it adhesive to both sides. This is going to make the fun foam sticky so that when we die cut, it's going to be sticky on both sides, creating a sticker. Now I cover it with stick-it on both sides and then run it through my die cutting machine to make sure the stick-it adhesive is really nice and secure to the fun foam. Then I've got a piece of smooth white cardstock trimmed to the same size that I'm going to replace on that one side, and then die cut the Happy Thanksgiving script from this. Before we pop it out of the layered material, we are going to ink it up with Wild Honey and Carved Pumpkin Distress inks. And I'm just doing an ombre effect of yellow and orange. Kind of work those together. And then I'm going to pop them out, and I started with the word Thanksgiving. I want to make sure that I get it centered or as close to centered as possible, and then I will put happy up above that. There's lots of little pieces in all of the loops of the letters. So you're going to want to pop all of those out. Sometimes you can get them to pop out just on your finger, or I love using the Spellbinders Tool-in-One. I'm a big Spellbinders fan. I absolutely adore my Spellbinders die cutting machine. In fact, that's what I use for everything you see here, anything that I have die cut. And I use that die cutting machine probably 98–99% of the time. It is a fantastic machine by far. And once I have Thanksgiving where I want it to go, and one of the things about this is the dots for the letters I in Thanksgiving are going to be super teeny tiny. So those they give me a little bit of trouble. I usually use a combination of tweezers and my Tool-in-One to help position those. But I go ahead and adhere everything else first, and then I go back, and my final step is to put a little dab of glue. I know that the Stick-It makes it sticky, but those little teeny tiny images really are going to need a liquid adhesive. So I put some little dabs of glue, and then I go ahead and work on getting those little dots for my eye in place. The final thing, you guys, is I forgot to mention, black glaze pen for the eyes, drew in the mouth, all of that so that the face has great detail. I'm going to take this panel, adhere it to a side fold card base to finish the card, and my Happy Thanksgiving scene card is all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this fall Thanksgiving scene card featuring Pretty Pink Posh August release stamps, dies, and stencils. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos that you might be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.